JD, FABEM, is a board-certified emergency physician who has worked on the front lines of the coronavirus pandemic. She is the author of the provocative top-selling book, I Do Not Consent, My Fight Against Medical Cancel Culture. Gold graduated from Chicago Medical School before attending Stanford University Law School to earn her Juris Doctorate. Her tireless work for AFLDS includes public speaking, research, writing, drafting legal policy statements and positions, meeting with politicians and policymakers, and educating the public. Her advocacy revolves around inalienable rights of freedom, bodily sovereignty, voluntary informed consent, free speech. In addition, she vehemently opposes bureaucratic encroachments on the doctor-patient relationship and overzealous state pharmacy boards. Please welcome Dr. Simone Gold.
You know, it takes a lot to get me to San Francisco. I mean, crazy. So first I want to thank Banu Vikram for just his tireless energy of putting this together and all the work he's doing for the people of San Francisco. When I heard what was going on in San Francisco, you know, at America's Frontline Doctors, I said, we have to jump, right? We have to jump on this. You just heard a statement from Leslie Manukin, Health Freedom Defense Fund, and their group, our group, we're working so hard to make sure that the people's rights don't get trampled upon. You guys are living it, you're seeing it, you're breathing it. I'm gonna give you some solid facts, some solid information, and then encouragement. First, louder, okay. Can we make this a little higher? Can we make this a little higher? Just a second. Okay, fantastic. So yes, the city of San Francisco is certainly pretty early to this train wreck. I understand that, and I understand the deadline of September 29th. First of all, it's so hypocritical, right? Did you all catch the picture of the maskless mayor?
Yeah. Oh my God.
Yeah.
What bullshit.
It's just crazy. And then you all heard the news yesterday about the FDA advisory panel?
Yep.
This is the tide is going to turn. The tide is going to turn. I just want to say that yesterday the FDA advisory panel voted against the booster shots 16-2. Now, I don't know if you all knew that 2 senior FDA regulators had quit. Did you all know that? That's highly unusual. This was a little bit before yesterday's vote. Right? It's just incredible. So I just want to say about that, the government is pushing a vaccine that's so effective you need a booster, and so safe they won't approve the booster. Right? I mean, only the government could say that with a straight face. So I looked at, do you all actually look at the order of the health officer number C1907Y? So, do you ever notice that the wordier and lengthier and longer these things are, the more obvious it should be that the thing itself is not true and good.
Right.
If something is true and good and correct, it does not need a complicated 30 pages to explain it. So, yeah. So let's go through the facts. The government, who happens to be the employer for many of you, states the following in that document, the public health order. Quote, the best way to address the current surge and future surges is for everyone who is eligible to get fully vaccinated as soon as possible. Now, that's on page 1. I'm telling you now, that is a huge lie. It is a whopper, a falsehood, inaccurate.
Yep.
The vaccines were created to combat Wuhan virus. We can talk about if they were even effective in any way, shape, or form for that. But what's not in dispute is that the Wuhan variant no longer exists in America. What we have now is the Delta variant. For all the fact checkers out there, you're going to be so disappointed because I'm going to give references for everything I'm saying. Okay? CDC Director Walensky said on August 6th, because she was forced to, that Delta variant is more than 99.5 or 99.9% of what's out there. It's also on the cdc.gov website. She was also forced to say on August 6th that the shots don't work to stop transmission of Delta.
Yep.
That's per the CDC. So then you're looking at this health order that's saying that the best way to address the surge is to get these shots. How is that possible? Okay, so. Now, if what's out there is Delta and the shots don't work against transmission of Delta, what is the legal basis to require anyone to take a shot? The only authority the government has over medical treatment, to the extent it has any authority, is to protect the public health. There's well-established law in America that you can't be required to take any treatment for your own personal benefit. You're allowed to do or not do anything medically that suits you. If you needed to take a pill once a week to save your life and you chose not to do it, even if it was entirely irrational, you absolutely have a right to do that. So that's the law. So if the thing doesn't stop transmission, there's actually no public health basis, and the pretext for even throwing it out at everyone is gone.
Gone.
At most you could argue, and I would argue vehemently against, but at most you could argue that it's a personal treatment. At most. And it's not a very good personal treatment, but that's at most. One moment. Sorry about the background.
Take your time.
Thank you. Okay.
Love you. We love you.
I'm very happy to be here. I like to be with warriors. I like to be with people who fight. That's why we exist at America's Frontline Doctors, is to help the fighters. Now, let's unravel this past year. I'm going to start with the beginning lies. They lied about everything. Now, the lies were as following. They told you that the virus was very, very dangerous. What they didn't tell you is it's not the virus, it's the individual susceptibility to the virus. We knew that since the beginning because children weren't getting sick. Many diseases affect people of all ages, infancy to adulthood and old age, and some preferentially select certain ages. We knew from the beginning it wasn't attacking the children. Therefore, it wasn't the virus, it's the individual susceptibility. We knew that immediately, and there's been tons of evidence since. So that was the first lie. The second lie is this lie that they said there's something called asymptomatic spread. Okay, so for the fact checkers out there who think that asymptomatic spread is a thing, and that I'm just making up that it's not a thing, go look up their Wuhan study. This was a study of 10 million people. 10 million people who were PCR positive but had no symptoms whatsoever were checked to see how many other people they made clinically sick. Out of 10 million people, asymptomatic, PCR positive, how many did they make sick? Any guesses? Zero. Now, that's only one study. I bring that to you because it's a really large study, but there were many studies like this. Asymptomatic spread is not a thing. Think how different this would have gone down if you hadn't been bamboozled with that. Right?
Right.
You know, the 6 feet, the social distancing, can't get together because, you know, you might be standing next to someone who might have something. That was all a lie.
Right.
Number three, they have you scared. It's kind of related to number one, that it's not the virus, it's the individual susceptibility. But never forget that the average age of death from this thing exceeds the national life expectancy.
Yeah.
Like, it gets you at the end of your life. Like all things do, and I sometimes think that people on the other side think that death is optional. It's kind of like, if only I didn't go down that road, I won't ever die. Like, what are they talking about? This gets you at the end of life. All the numbers have said this since the beginning. The most recent statistics from the CDC, I think it was around mid-May, they said that 95% of people who died with COVID-19 had 4 comorbidities. Not 2.6, as you've heard earlier, but it's 4. 4 comorbidities. What are the most important comorbidities? Obesity, a word we're never even allowed to say because it's considered fat shaming. It's just a fact. It's obesity, okay? And by the way, if I was obese and I went to my doctor and I was deathly afraid of this thing, I'd like them to tell me that the thing that they can do. One of the things we tell people when they get COVID, control your sugar. That's something you can do right in the minute. You come down with SARS, you get sick, it's really important that you have a low normal glucose. That means limit your carbs right when you're sick. These are important facts that you need to be told. Obesity and diabetes are runaway by far the most important variables. Other significant medical problems like very severe heart, lung, kidney disease. Number 4 lie, they told you early treatment is dangerous. This is actually why I started going public, was I was having conversations with doctors who were telling me insane things, like hydroxychloroquine wasn't safe. I said, you mean that drug that they gave me before I took a trip to Africa? The thing that they just handed you without any conversation at all? The thing that military men took when they're overseas? What are you talking, the thing that they use from infancy to old age across many continents? The thing that's been FDA approved for 65 years that derives from quinine found in tree barks reputedly George Washington gave to his troops? That thing you're trying to tell me is unsafe? That's when I knew something was afoot. We were no longer having conversations, does it work or not work, but it wasn't safe. That's how I knew that there was something else going on. Of course it's safe. It's actually one of the safest meds on the planet. It's in the WHO's, yes, we don't like the WHO, but they maintain a list of essential medications that all nations need to have. Hydroxychloroquine's on the list, so is ivermectin. And we're like telling people it's not safe. I don't understand how their heads don't explode. Yeah. Okay, yeah. The 5th lie was that early treatment doesn't work. And I'm not gonna bore you with the details. I'll just say one. Have you seen the nation of India?
Yep.
So India, when they withheld the ivermectin, the deaths were high. And when they gave everyone ivermectin, the deaths go down. And they want to say this is anecdotal and somehow it doesn't exist. And I'm like, give me some of that anecdote, some of that coincidence. There's like, I think 60 or 65 studies now that show ivermectin works.
Yeah.
I think there's about 300 that show hydroxychloroquine. Yeah. Next lie was that lockdowns work. Listen, everyone remembers the video, right? Like a Fauci even saying so. Locking down to prevent the transmission of a tiny respiratory virus has always been known to fail. For the fact checkers out there, the study I like best to show that a lockdown can never work for this is the Marine study. The Marine study did a hardcore lockdown of their Marine recruits. And under the most hardcore lockdown you could imagine, they took away their gadgets. It was much more than you could really accomplish in daily life. The virus still got around because that's the nature of tiny respiratory viruses. We humans can't stop it. And then the other one that really hurt our country was saying that masks work. When people ask me how did I know propaganda, I said, well, one very important clue to teach your children is look at the evidence on the ground that existed prior to the controversy. We had 50 years of data on masks. We know what they work, they work for big things like spit or blood. But here's a good, useful little fact. The virus is 0.1 micron in size. Remember when we all get this smoke from wildfires, right? If you go to the EPA website, it will tell you. If you go to the EPA website, Environmental Protection Agency, they'll tell you that the size of the particles in the wood smoke is 0.5. And then they say that masks won't work. Well, if a smoke particle is 0.5 and the virus is 0.1 and it doesn't work per the CDC to wear a mask for the smoke, then how's it going to work on the 0.1 virus? And then the hardcore fact that a surgical mask, the pore size in a surgical mask is 100 microns. The virus is 0.1 micron. That's a 1,000-fold difference. It's like throwing sand at a chain link fence. It's not relevant. It's just not relevant. So those are the foundational lies we've been hearing about all, year and a half. These are the newest lies. One is that the shots are safe. For the fact checkers, University of California, San Diego, Salk Institute, they did a very clever study. They took a pseudovirus. They didn't even take the SARS-CoV-2. They made a pseudovirus kind of round, and around it they put the spike proteins. And the spike proteins by themselves without the virus are dangerous. They attach to skin cells, pulmonary cells. There's another study that showed they're attacking the heart cells. They cross the blood-brain barrier. By themselves, the spike proteins are dangerous. Number 2, this one really breaks my heart as a woman, as a mom. Never before did we ever put pregnant women on the front lines of an experimental anything.
Yeah.
Never. This is how you know that our leaders have lost their minds. This is always a protected class. I can't tell you how often as a doctor, I was a doctor more than 20 years when this happened. And even, before COVID, if a pregnant woman came in, there were so many things we just didn't do. I mean, if anybody been pregnant, you go to the doctor like, I have a headache. Oh, don't take anything. Maybe you could take a Tylenol, right? They're like, ooh, maybe don't have a sip of wine. Definitely don't have a go puff on the cigarette. No. Yeah, sushi, forget it. Forget that bite of sushi. Yeah. And then this year, roll up your sleeve and give me the injectable new stuff.
Yeah.
This is criminal. Now, the criminal, the lies continued. 2 months ago, they published an article in the New England Journal of Medicine purporting that they're safe during pregnancy, that the shots are safe during pregnancy. That was kind of the headline. All you had to do was read the article to find what they were doing, the lie. They lumped, to come to the conclusion that the shots were safe during pregnancy, they lumped together the risk to first, second, and third trimester.
Yep.
So that was an interesting sleight of hand. Never as a doctor would I lump a first trimester pregnancy in the same risk as a third trimester pregnancy. In the first trimester, all the organs are being built. In the third trimester, the baby's just growing and can pretty much be delivered at 24, 25, 26 weeks. They have nothing to do with each other in terms of medical risk. So when you looked at the study itself, there was an 83% miscarriage rate in the early pregnancies. It was incredible, incredibly high. We doctors went just crazy. Quietly, a few days ago, the New England Journal of Medicine printed a correction to that study. And that's good, but it came from pressure from us, and I want to know how come that wasn't front page news?
Right.
Never heard about it, right? Right, okay. Just another, number 3 lie recently, that shots are effective. Shots are effective. We predicted last year they wouldn't be effective. It's not that we were geniuses with crystal balls. It's when you looked at the application of the Pfizer and Moderna that they submitted to the FDA, they specifically said that the shots were not to stop transmission. It says it in the application papers. The shots were approved to diminish symptoms only, like a treatment. We kept looking at each other and we kept saying, but this sounds like a treatment, not like a vaccine. It reduced symptoms from moderate to mild. That's what it was approved for. It was never approved for transmission. The reason was it didn't kill the damn thing, okay? So now we've given it to hundreds of millions of people all across the world, and lo and behold, the most vaccinated nations in the world have the highest surges. So, for the fact checkers out there, the Seychelles and Israel are the most vaccinated nations in the world. Israel is like a 80% or 85%, some crazy high number. The Palestinian territories, like 3 miles away, are at 11%. So guess which one is having massive surge? Israel. Okay, closer to home, Barnstable, Massachusetts, per the CDC, MMWR weekly report, August 6th, they had a community, 74% were vaccinated. And they're having a huge surge of the vaccinated people. University of California, San Diego, published in the New England Journal of Medicine, 87% of their healthcare workers were vaxxed, and in July, and yet 57% of those who got sick were vaccinated. And so naturally the FDA agreed yesterday not to give the boosters. They don't work. Why don't they work? Because what's out there is Delta, and the shots were made for Wuhan. This really, you don't need a PhD. It's crazy. The 4th recent lie about the shots that you probably haven't heard, I'm going to share with you. The viral load is very high in vaccinated people. The study lead author Chau, C-H-A-U, is a University of Oxford affiliate in Vietnam, showed that vaccinated people are carrying 251 times the viral load that they did last year. Do you understand? They're carrying a high viral load, so when people are exposed to people like that, they're getting hit with a much higher viral load. Vaccinated people, in our opinion, are the super spreaders. Author Liu from Japan, author Gazet from Israel. Most of the people getting sick are vaccinated. And quote, Delta is more likely than other variants to spread amongst vaccinated people. Published in Nature, August 12th. Now, here are some obvious common sense things, right? Putting something into your body that tricks your cells into making a viral protein, a virus-like protein, so your tricked out immune system attacks it, is likely to cause autoimmune disease, right? Yep. Doesn't that just make sense? If you're asking your body to fight something and then it fights it, you might turn it on too much. So when people say, well, we've given it to hundreds of millions of people and it appears to be safe, that's another magician's sleight of hand. The answer is not how many people they've given it to, it's how long have those people had the shot in them.
Yeah.
You could give it to all 7 billion people, I don't care. If it was just last year, I don't know what that means in terms of autoimmune disease, which takes a long time to attack your organs. I don't know what that means for fertility. I don't know what that means in terms of like birth defects. I don't know, it hasn't been long enough. So don't let them fool you by saying they've given it to hundreds of millions. Now, the other big lie that is really offensive to me as a physician is they're trying to tell me that natural immunity doesn't exist, or that it's, right? The reason this lie gets me the most is because even though I'm telling you a lot of medical facts, you know that I'm a lawyer too, and what's bringing us down is the legal. It's not the medical, it's the legal.
Yep.
So if they can convince you of such a basic lie, the natural immunity is inferior somehow to vaccine immunity, I feel hopeless. Don't allow them to bamboozle you over your common sense.
Yep.
You know that if you've had chickenpox, you're immune. If you've had measles, you're immune. If you have this year's flu, you don't get this year's flu again. Obviously, yet they're tricking people into saying this. So let me assure you, with all the years of emergency medicine behind me that I can muster to teach you this, of course once you get the thing, your body remembers it. It reactivates if it needs to. We know that historically, and we've proven it with SARS-2. There's studies coming out already showing that immunity through the natural means is durable and robust. There's many studies like that now, but for the fact checkers, look up lead author Gazit, G-A-Z-I-T, from a study out of Tel Aviv, Israel. Also, SARS-1, as you know, is very related to SARS-2. They're 78% identical. People who had SARS-1 18 or 19 years ago appear to be immune to SARS-2. 19 years later, 78% identical.
Yeah.
This is very significant because the numbers of, and predictable, right? The number, they keep worrying people about the Delta variant, then they're gonna worry about the Mu variant and all that. The variants are very similar to each other. They're like 0.3% divergence, that's it. SARS-1 and SARS-2 are 78% identical, and 19 years later, people are still immune. Delta and Alpha and the Mu, they're like 0.3 is the maximum variation. Don't let anybody worry you about these variants. If you've had COVID, you are immune from getting COVID. Now, this brings me more to why we're all here and we're all so upset. It has to do with what's going on legally. It's very clear from what I've just said that none of this has anything to do with the public health, let alone your own personal health. You want to get the shot, it's your business. Go get informed, figure it out, do what you want. We have no opinion on people getting voluntary informed consent, doing as they wish, the same as I wouldn't on any other decision. If I had judgmental thoughts about people's behaviors, I wouldn't have lasted in the ER. Do as you wish. But don't let yourself be coerced. That's my first thing I must say to you. The reason is we've talked to people who've gotten harmed, who were coerced into taking it. They're typically healthcare workers like nurses who took the shot to get along, and then they were in the unfortunate minority, people who had problems. It's exceedingly difficult to live with yourself, like the kind of the fury you have at yourself for letting your own common sense be overridden. You change as a person if you take a knee. You cannot let yourself be coerced, just as a general principle. Number two, don't jump the gun. There are many lawsuits pending. I don't know if you all know, America's Frontline Doctors has brought 5 lawsuits. So a couple of the ones that are pending right now, there's one against the University of California to defend the COVID recovered college student. There's one against the Department of Defense to defend the COVID recovered soldier. My current favorite is we sued Mayor de Blasio of New York. And the reason is he passed a regulation